lounging, son.
Anyways, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and with me today, I have one of my favorite indie cartoonists, Tony McMillen's with us today, and we're going to talk his past projects, and more importantly, we're going to talk his new project that's going to drop on Kickstarter soon. Welcome, Tony.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, dude. So, like I said, we've talked before. It was written before before I had actually launched the channel. So, for everybody that's not as familiar with your work, a little bit about yourself, how you got into comics.
Yeah. So I'm a novelist as well as a cartoonist, and so my first novel was published 2013. That was called Nefarious Twit, and then my first comic book work was 4 years ago, and that was Lumen. And I've been pretty good. I love like when artists have like really good runs, like So I've been on a pretty good run for about 5 years now. Like, new comics, new novels. So I did Lumen, and I followed that with Serious Creatures. And my new thing is ATTABOY, and so I'm worried I'm going to die, so I keep trying to make new stuff so like I have a good legacy to leave behind. That's basically the fear.
I haven't read all of Lumen. I need to get the trade because you had sent me a couple of the issues, but it was out of print, so I couldn't get the rest. So the trade is still in print. Am I correct?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And Lumen's cool. Lumen is like a sci-fi fantasy book with basically the whole idea is there's a world of eternal darkness, and there's a hero with a lantern who's like fighting these mushroom monsters and trying to make his way through it. And it's funny, actually, I named the world the Noctera, and a year ago, Scott Snyder comes through like his Noctera book, which I get. I mean, it's a pun that you're gonna stumble upon. But when it happened, I was like, ah, shit, man, that was my thing. But I was like, I get it. And Scott Snyder's awesome, so it's not like he's gonna sue me. I can't sue him. It's fine. But that's the essential idea of Lumen.
Yeah, Lumen. I mean, your art is phenomenal. I just
thank you.
Saving Serious Creatures because I had a couple issues, and once I knew that we were gonna chat, I wanted to kind of save it. I wanted something fresh in my head to. Fuck, I love that book. I love that book so much. It was so dope. I couldn't put it down. I mean, I was reading it. Well, you saw me drop the 5-star Goodreads. I finished it.
That was great, man. I mean, I check Goodreads like every once in a while, and I saw a new one. I was like, oh, I know that fucking guy. I was like, oh, this is great, 5 stars. And what you wrote was really, really, really touching, and it makes me feel great. So, and Serious Creatures, I finished 6 issues and it's collected now, and it's a literary book in a lot of ways, but I think ATTABOY, I don't know, I gotta wait for a while, but I think Serious Creatures is my favorite thing I've done. And people don't know, Serious Creatures is basically about a teenage special effects artist who's working in Hollywood during the late 70s and 80s, and it'll go through the 90s. And it's loosely based on Rob Bottin's career. Rob Bottin is a guy who did special effects for The Thing and RoboCop and Legend. And he started when he's 14. He started at 14 working in the film industry. He was on the Star Wars set. He worked on the Mos Eisley scene.
Right.
And I just read all these stories of this guy, and I started thinking like, man, that's an incredible life. And so I did a weird version of it, and it became Serious Creatures.
Have you reached out to him?
Here's what's really cool about this guy. So it's part of the legend. After the early 2000s, he's disappeared like completely.
Oh shit. Okay.
So other people I'm actually part of a Rob Bottin fan club, which is full of people he's worked with on major motion pictures. They're like, yeah, I wonder where Rob is. I hope he's doing okay. And there's legends that he's in real estate and he's doing fine. Other legends he just went kind of crazy and he's a recluse. And some people would say, well, he simply CGI came around and he's like, okay, well, I made my money. I've made my name. What else is there to say? And he gracefully walked off the stage. And other people, like Stan Winston and Rick Baker and other people continued in the field, and they would always kind of say, it's a bummer now that CGI is kind of encroached because, a lot of times these guys would design all this cool stuff for a movie, and they go, well, that's fine, but we're just going to CGI it, so don't even bother. And their role got smaller and smaller. And so Rob Bottin, it seemed like he might have seen where it was going, and he walked off. And so that was part of like, oh man, I gotta. It's a perfect ending in a weird way. It's so mysterious. So that's part of the reason why I did the book. But I would love to see if you would read it, or if you would be into it. But also I don't want to ruin the legend, because like if he just happens to be like, oh, I'm here, I got a food truck. It's like, oh shit, I don't know, it might ruin it.
Yeah, it'll ruin the mystique for sure.
Yeah.
I know. I love the concept of the book. I mean, I love old movies and I love practical effects.
Yeah.
More than CGI. I can respect the talent that goes into doing CGI, but at the same time, like there's just something about it. There's just a certain mystique to it. There's a certain kind of like craft to it that you just lose in CGI, you know?
Yeah, and part of it is like some people argue it looks better. I'm like, are more realistic. I'm like, oh, no, that's not necessarily why I like it better. It just like you said, there's a craft to it. It's almost a magic trick. So part of the I think it looks great, but also I'm like, how did they do it? And I also love watching behind the scenes featurettes, and
Yeah.
you watch the making of Aliens. It's really interesting to have all these different practical effects and then stuff like that. And then you watch the making of something newer, and it's like, well, there's a guy who's very talented and he creates it on a computer, and that's just not as interesting to me.
Hmm.
And I will also love, like, especially the late 70s and early 80s where my book takes place. It was really guerrilla. It was really punk rock. There's like a bunch of guys and a bunch of kids just making monster stuff in their garage. They go out to the set, they make the werewolf or whatever it's going to be, and then the movie makes tons of money, and all of a sudden these guys are rock stars. And so as a kid, I'd read Fangoria magazine, and all the artists were like these like stoner rocker dudes who are like 22 and looking super badass and like working on like some terrible trauma movie or something. I was like, oh, that's the way to do it, man. That's the life. And so I was just fascinated by those guys. Like, what was their day to day like?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like I think what made me really love that book. I know we're talking a lot about the book, but it's like so fresh on is that it's unlike anything.
Mm,
Never read a story like it was just very unique, and I think that that's what stands out to me because I read a shit ton of comic books. I mean, I work
right.
in a shop, so sometimes I'm reading books that I wouldn't even necessarily pick up, but it's like the book for the week. So it's like
Yeah.
I kind of have to read it so I can talk to people. And about 50% of the time I like it, 50% of the time I'm like, I wish I didn't waste my time reading it. But
Yeah.
I think that that's why it really stands out to me is that it's something that is unlike anything else I've read in a very long time. It stands completely wholly on its own. And not to mention that your art style is fucking dope. You know,
Oh,
I
that's
need
rad.
to like I saw you starting to say what you described on another podcast about your art style, and I stopped because I didn't want to inform myself. I didn't want to ask like the same question.
Right.
I'm curious, like, how did you develop the art style that you have? Because it doesn't look like anybody but Tony McMillen. That's what
Dude,
it looks like, you know?
that's the highest compliment I can receive. So thank you very much. Like I've said one time before, like Keith Moon is one of my favorite drummers, and the joke about Keith Moon is that he's the best Keith Moon style drummer in the world because no one plays like him. Some people actually hate how he plays. It's sloppy, but it's like it's distinct. And so I think partly what it was is like I've always liked to draw, and when I was a kid, I loved like Todd McFarlane, and I loved I still love McFarlane. I love Frank Miller especially. And I think Frank Miller's still in my work a lot. McFarlane not so much, but I would definitely draw like McFarlane as much as I could, or Eric Larson or Frank Miller, and it was a little kid's version of that, and that's great. But what I start learning more and more is if I kept drawing something and it didn't look like anybody else, I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep pursuing that direction. And I think partly just because I thought it was interesting, but I also kind of thought in the back of my mind, well, it's a cliche, but it's like you can be the world's second best of a lot of things, but it's a lot smarter to kind of bet on yourself and at least be the best at whatever you can do. It's also in a weird way, it's kind of easier. Like if I'm doing my own thing, I got no one to compare myself to except myself. But
Mm.
the big thing for me was when I start the style I'm kind of doing currently, I start using Pilot Parallel Pen, which is a calligraphy pen, which has a flat uh, edge to it. It's almost like a razor blade, and so you can use the corner of it for fine stuff, but the other one is this big sloppy kind of line. And I start using that like maybe 8 years ago, 7 years ago, and I start noticing, oh, I can if I draw side to side, it almost looks like when you had an old computer and print something out and go.
Yeah.
And I started messing with the abstract of that, and it also helped me I start using more blacks and filling in more blacks and more shadow, and I started experimenting with less holding lines. So if I did a figure, I didn't have to draw the outline of his arm or his leg. I was like, if you kind of do these smudgy lines, you sort of get the figure. And so sometimes I dial that back, and it's a little more it's a little closer to reality, but a lot of times I just go with it. And so years and years of doing that, I'm kind of where I'm at now, and it's always changing. I think every artist grows and stuff like that. And so, and like Serious Creatures, one of the big challenges was like I'm doing a lot of the book takes place in the real world, and so unlike Lumen or even ATTABOY, my new thing, which are these abstract sci-fi landscapes and fantasy worlds. I was like, oh, I gotta draw like this is a bar, this is a stool, this is a thing, but I still wanted to keep my style. So I was like, okay, how do we do that? And I looked at Sam Keith or Bill Sienkiewicz, and I was like, these guys have super crazy styles when they want to. They can also draw a diner. Can I draw a diner? Can I draw a bus stop? And where's the balance? And it actually helped me in a lot of ways, because you know, like reading when I was a kid, I read the Max, and the Max was like this great like training wheels to more adult weird stuff, because it still had a superhero looking guy, but it was more about like trauma and people talking. And he would draw great architecture, but it was still stylized and weird. And so I was never bored. And drawing these books, I don't want to ever be bored. And because I think that will show.
Mhm.
And so if I'm drawing somebody's flip-flops on a beach, I'm like, I want to make this the coolest, weirdest angle I can put on these flip-flops to make it like just have some life. And so I'm always like pursuing that.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely hitting the mark with that for sure. And you know, I'm kind of curious because like I got who some of the, you know, you every director is something Beard, right? You have Space
Yeah.
Beard, you have Shark Beard. I know who Shark Beard and Space Beard are. I kind of could guess a couple of the other ones, but could you just, this is
Yeah,
on personal note, I just want to know who the other beards are.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so Wolfbeard is John Landis, the director of American Werewolf in London. He also did like Animal House, and so that's Wolfbeard. What do I call him? No Beard. No Beard is actually Joe Dante, the director of Gremlins, and he did The Howling. And he's kind of like a notoriously really nice guy, and so it also has no beard, so that made some sense to make him that guy. Bluebeard is James Cameron. And so what's cool with James Cameron is that James Cameron was a special effects guy. He worked on John Carpenter's Escape from New York. He worked on Piranha. He actually directed Piranha 2 until he got fired. So I was like, oh, that's cool. And the Bluebeard thing was that all his films have a blue tint. He also has been married, I think, 5 times. And so like the Bluebeard legend, he kind of goes through women, it seems like, and maybe is a little destructive. Not that he's like ever been abusive, but he just kind of rips through marriages. So that was Bluebeard. The Godbeard was Coppola from The Godfather. And so there's a scene where my Coppola analog kind of he rails against the big budget blockbuster special effects movies, which I thought, and which is fun because he is like that guy, but at the same time, him and George Lucas owned a company together. And the reason why Star Wars kind of happened was that him and Coppola needed money, and he's like, George, what do you got? And part of the reason why he took The Godfather is that they needed money. And like George Lucas was involved in Apocalypse Now initially. It's really weird how they're all intertwined, like and they went different directions. And so let me see, there's some other beards. I'm trying to remember who else I had in the movie in the book. Wolfbeard, No Beard. Oh, John Carpenter. John Carpenter is Near Beard because he has a mustache. And I'm really focused on facial hair for some reason. In fact, the book, there's a whole thing about Bobby's growing up and growing a beard and how that means something. And so John Carpenter is Near Beard, and yeah, the beard thing is something I was thinking about. It's one of the reasons why I made it a comic. I was going to make this a book, a novel. I actually wrote a chapter, and I was like, oh, it'd be really fun to actually do like silhouettes in everyone's beard and talk about who they are. And it'd be really cool to show the Jaws shark as an icon and a symbol. And I was like, can't really do that in a novel. And I kept having these surreal ideas. And I was like, I should try it as a comic. So I drew like 6 pages, and I was like, oh, it's a comic now. It's got to be a comic.
Yeah, and you pump these comics out, man. Like Lumen, Serious Creatures. You got this new book. You worked on another book, Image Grand Design.
Yeah,
that was fucking dope.
Oh, that was a blast.
Yeah, I want to hear a little bit about your take. You know, I've talked to a lot of you guys that have been on the book. I mean, I think that the response has been insane. You know, it's an amazing project from an amazing group of, you know, everybody in there. I feel very honored to be a part of that group because there's such positivity and so many dope people that I've met from there. I want to hear your experience with the book.
Yeah, so Eli, basically, he found the Stephen Platt card that Rob Liefeld bought Stephen Platt in the 90s. It was worth like, you know, thousands. And he gave it to me. He's like, if you do, I'll give you this card. You do 8 pages. And I was like, okay. I mean, this car doesn't have any wheels anymore. It's you know, Stephen Platt drove it into the ground, but I'll take a chance. I chose Image Grand Disaster because there's more freedom. And because like, they were talking about Image Grand Design is going to be like more of a very gridded kind of way, and I was like, I just want to kind of have fun with these characters. And so my first thought was like, I've honestly dreamt about the early Image characters, and like when Brandon Graham did Prophet a couple years ago, I loved it. I was like, oh, that's exactly what these guys need to do with these properties. I have somebody new come in and do like an Alan Moore, Frank Miller, what they did in the 80s of Swamp Thing and Daredevil, have them reconfigure it and go for something different. And so I was like, who would I mess with? I was like, I love Savage Dragon. I still read. I wouldn't touch that.
Same.
Yeah, Eric Larson. I mean, if anyone else did it, it wouldn't even matter to me. It's Eric Larson's book. So I was like, oh, Pitt had a lot of potential, but was not really realized in my mind. I love the first few issues of Pitt. It got super late, and the story just wasn't quite there. But there was something there. So I said, I'll do Pitt as my main character. And I was like, what will I? And sort of was like, what was my version of Pitt? How would I change Pitt? And I had 8 pages to do it. And so I also thought about Sam and Twitch. I love Sam and Twitch from Spawn. I thought that'd be cool to draw. And then eventually I was like, okay, I'm gonna have a couple pages where I just draw all the guys I want to draw. So the Max shows up, Spawn shows up, Chapel shows up. I think I did Prophet, Super Patriot, Abner Cadaver from Savage Dragon. And I also had little jokes. Like basically it was Sam remembering the story. So he calls like, you know, Spawn. I think he calls him like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man. He makes fun of some of the designs and how they're a little close to some Marvel characters and whatnot. And that was really fun. And I did that in between Serious Creatures issue 3 and 4, I think. And I knocked out really fast. And I like the work. I actually wish I would have spent like a slightly more time on it. It's cool and it's rushed, but I think I did it like a week. I was just like just going nuts with it. I did barely any thumbnails. I was just like, I'm just gonna draw this and keep on just go with it out of my gut. And so the whole book's great though. Like Sam Royale stuff. I've always loved Sam's stuff. I've known him like online for like 5 years now or something, or 4 years. His book Dishoom is really good comics, and his stuff with the Max in the book is stand out to me. David Brower's I've said this online, but he's the guy who I'm like, he is 90s Image. Like it's not like a put on or him having to like change his style. I'm like, he would just slot right in there, dude. Like he could do like Brigade, and I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like that's what he does. Like, and so I was really happy he was the cover guy. I'm like, this totally makes sense to me. Like I really like his work.
Yeah, he killed it. I mean, he killed it on the Wizard zine, the cover for that.
Yeah.
These other things that he's been posting on his page. I mean, that dude is, he's insane. I mean, he could easily 90s Image. He's the epitome of it.
Yeah, like I would buy his book. I was like a 12-year-old kid, and I'm buying now. But I'm saying I was 12-year-old. Like, holy, who's this dude? Like, fuck Stephen Platt. This guy has got it. like I don't draw veins on people because I'm not good at it. But I'm like, he figured the vein thing out. It's like Simon Bisley, him, then Platt. Like Dave Browse is above Platt now with the veins. That's just me talking.
I'll co-sign that. Yeah, he's dope. I mean, I decided I'm gonna talk to him. Come up in a couple weeks, so I'm definitely
right on
out with him.
He's a musician too. He's really talented. He's he posted some piano stuff he's did.
Oh wow, dude! I didn't. Oh, dope.
Yeah, I hate multi-talented people. I'm like, stop.
I live with one. I mean, it's not just the paintings that are behind me. There's a fucking piano there as well. And how does she know how to play? She just listens.
Oh, that's amazing. Really?
By ear. She can play piano by ear. She can play the guitar by ear. And, all I can do is barely draw a fucking stick figure. I can't play one key on the piano. I can't do one thing on the guitar. So, yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, let's talk about ATTABOY.
Yeah.
You sent me the copy. I told you I had to wait because I know that you're printing an oversized, which I'm fucking super down for. I want to hear a little bit about the project and the choices and how you're making it oversized and all that stuff.
Yeah. So ATTABOY is basically my like treasury size 13-inch by 9-inch oversized comic book, which is disguised as an instructional manual for a video game that may or may not have ever existed. And the initial thought was actually Lumen started out as an idea of when I was a kid, I loved the Zelda manual. The manual had beautiful artwork. It was really immersive. And as a really little kid, my cousins who's older would play Zelda. I couldn't play; it was too complicated. But I loved the manual. I was into the story, and so I always thought that was a cool, kind of underused medium. I was like, a video game manual would be cool. And so for years, I tried to make Lumen. Initially, it was going to be this an art book disguised as a video game manual, and eventually, as Lumen became a comic. And then I kept on thinking about it, and I kept thinking about this idea of like, I love Mega Man, I love Astro Boy, I love little boy robots, and I made my own named ATTABOY. And I was like, oh, it'd be cool to do that video game manual again. And then I was like, I kept on messing with it. I was like, it's not right. And I was like, and it's really dumb to say this out loud, but what made it work is like, oh, it shouldn't just be an art book. It should be a comic book, which is like, I make comic books. Of course it should. But once I started understanding that, it came out. And so what's really fun about Attaboy is it's 74 pages. It's going to be gigantic. Like the old Marvel Treasury editions are like bigger than Rolling Stone magazine. They're just these huge things. And so that's how I'm building it. And that's how I'm getting it printed. But the book itself is this, it works on a lot of levels. So one level, it's just this awesome adventure story. This little boy robot who's fighting the evil motherboard in this weird robot future fantasy world. And there's like, since the pages are big, I went nuts. So some pages are just full of giant figures and splash pages and all kinds of crazy action. Other ones are tons of panels and make it really like, jammed full, because I'm not worried. It's huge. That's one angle of the story, is the action adventure story. And the other story is like sort of Mandela effect thing, where the thing starts out with there's a video game from when I was a kid that no one else seems to remember. And the narrator, which is me, I'm talking about how no one seems to remember this game, and I have distinct memories of it. And so I'm making this manual to make sure that it was real and that I didn't make it up, and also see if it makes anyone else think about this game. And so part of the book itself will have instructions how to, like, the controls do this to beat this level, do this. It will have like an inventory of weapons and items. And then the third level, which is, it was kind of unexpected, but as I was writing and making it, it became like what the book was really about is I started talking. It gets really personal. It's like all my stuff is somewhat personal. Even Serious Creatures, it's based on Rob Bottin. A lot of the stuff with the family is really from my life.
Mm.
And in this book, it's about I just became a father 2 years ago, and I've been thinking again about my parents. And it's about my parents and their divorce and all this stuff. And it's really funny because it's channeled through this little like robot kid with a triangle head who's like shooting mechanical gargoyles. But it's also about my mom and dad not working out, and it's how hard it is to keep friends as you get older. And so it became this really to me at least a very personal book. And I was kind of surprised. And so I'm very proud of it. I'm really excited for people to see it. And I think that it will be, for indie comics and in comics in general, in the huge format, it's sort of an event. It's sort of, to me, like when you see a 3D movie or something, it's like, this is different. Like I loved Tom Scioli. I love all his work, but I love his Fantastic Four came out in the grand design in the huge book. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And also for that book, because there's so many panels, that was like kind of needed. And I bought a couple old Marvel Treasury. I have the Treasury of Thor, and I'm like, this feels great. This feels so big. Like when you see a big Kirby panel, and Kirby was on this book in particular, was a real influence. I was looking at his power and his action. So I hope people see it and knocks their head off. I really do.
Dude, I can't wait.
Thanks. Yeah.
I'm so stoked. Seriously, I think you started teasing it like it was a while ago when you started doing the art. I'm like, when are you doing are you doing Kickstarter? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And like, you didn't have any information yet, and then you dropped it that you wanted to do treasuries. So I was like, fuck yes. Like, I sometimes will not. I don't wait, but I try to gauge now, because Marvel does it. They're printing a lot of their stuff in treasury. So like if that's gonna be a treasury edition, I'm just gonna buy it when it comes out like that, because
of course,
I love that size. And I mean, this week, the Marvels, that series that had a bunch of different artists that a lot of the people in the group were talking about, they're like, I don't know why anybody would sleep on this book. Look at this art. And then I went to work and I'm like, holy shit, I did sleep on it. So now I'm getting the treasury, like, so the fact that you're doing that format.
No, you're totally right. And I also, other creators out there, it's kind of a simple rule, but I really try to do this. I think some people don't. I really go like, would I pay money for this? Everything I do. And so I thought about, like, Attaboy, like, I think the best way to present this is a huge format. And I was like worried, like, maybe it'll cost too much money. And I asked people, and I thought about it. I was like, no, I think it works. It's 74 pages. It's a complete story. It's like, it's an equivalent of 3 issues of a book, but it's also in this huge format that really, it's built for that. And so I think, I don't know, man, I think people are going to be I don't know, pleasantly surprised. I think people, it's funny. This, I told somebody else this online. Like, this is the first thing I've done. People were actually kind of hyped for. So I hope it like it delivers. I think it's gonna, but people just didn't give a shit before, I guess. So I was never worried.
I think it's gonna be good. It's good.
Yeah. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I'm not like down the street and some like old lady grabs me like, "Attaboy, dude, when's that shit hitting?" I'm like, it's not like that yet. That'd be awesome though. I'm waiting for that.
Yeah. You just get stopped on the street. Excuse me, sir. That would be hilarious.
That'd be the best day of my life. Like
I mean, I'm telling you, dude, I have she used to write for my site and she used to do reviews. She lives in England and she saw our written interview and she's like, what the fuck? I love his art.
Oh, cool.
Oh shit, that's dope, dude. Like, because that's what I want to do by talking to you and talking to other indie creators is I want to bring more attention to your guys' work because I really appreciate it and I want to see you guys, get more recognition and get more eyes on that stuff, dude. And I think that this is going to be yet another project that is going to get people talking. I mean, you did it with Lumen, Serious Creatures, you stepped it up, and Attaboy is going to be just as fucking dope, I think, as your other projects.
Hey, again, thanks for letting me on the show in general, but the show is great and it's awesome. And I hope you're right. I do. I don't try to have false modesty or anything like that, but I'm like, I think this is pretty awesome. And like, I also feel like for me personally, like it spiraled out of control in a good way. I was like doing the book. I was like, okay, it's going to be like 48 pages. And eventually, no. It's got more and more. And so it kept on growing more legs and stuff like that. And, it's cool too, like artistically, it's, people could see it and go, that's Tony McMillen if they recognize that. But I'm doing new things and trying some stuff out, and it's all in service of the story. And the closest thing is like, if you ever seen like a movie like Natural Born Killers or even Kill Bill, where like, yeah, one scene it's animated for some reason, and then it's black and white, and then it's this and that, and it just keeps on morphing. And in a good way, I think it does that because with my book and those other movies, like it does it because the story needs it to do that. And so this is me really, like the other books I've done have kind of like a built template. This one kind of goes nuts. And so I hope people follow and enjoy that, because I'm like, I'm gonna hold your hand at first and then it's gonna throw you off a cliff and then see what you think,
When is the Kickstarter going to be launching?
My guess is June 15th or 16th, like right in the middle of June. Because basically I put the order in today and I'm hoping within, if less than 2 weeks, I'll get the proof, and I'll use the proof in the video just to show people, hey, this is a normal book, this is my book. And that's the final part of the Kickstarter thing that I don't have yet. And then I just launched the video. I launched the Kickstarter campaign. So that's the plan, And what's cool about what I usually do is I don't have any collaborators, so I don't have to wait for anyone's contribution and I don't do Kickstarters unless the book's done. So it's kind of like I'm ready to go. I'm right there. I'm like with everybody else. Like I want to read Attaboy. It's I have, but I want to read it in my hands. I want to see the big book.
Yeah, same here, man. Like I said, like there's just something about, and I was talking to somebody earlier today. He had sent me some PDFs because was doing an interview with him and I hadn't read his work before. But I'm like, fuck, I only read a couple of them, bro. I was like, it was enough for me. I got a taste, but I'll read it in print. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, totally.
About it.
Yeah, like there's a guy who's part of our group, Dave Howlett. Dave Howlett does an amazing book. It's called The Makers. And The Makers is sort of like if Galaxy Quest happened to the Image founders. So all these early 90s comic book guys go off into this cosmic adventure. Anyways, I've downloaded the first 4 issues, on PDF, and I read them. I like them. He released it in print, and he was nice enough to actually just send me issue 1 because he knows I bought the other issues, and he's a cool guy. It looks even better, and it felt even better, and I responded even more to the book in my hands. It's something totally different. Like I'm a very tactile person. Same. I love it. Even if like a novel, I love to go to like a beach or something, hold a book in my hand. I live near Boston. I go into Boston to work, so I love to go on the train station, have a book in my hand. There's nothing quite like that,
I mean, I 100% agree, dude. That's why, like, even like lately, like some old issues, I'll just get a beat up copy of a book than buy a trade with that bright white paper when they try to reproduce the colors. It's something that it physically bothers me looking at it, And it's not that the art's bad. It's just that the color's not the same. For for newsprint, you know? So
I'm nuts in that color stuff. For like I start finally buying old Kirby single issues because like I was like my Commandy trade paperback, the color it's just so garish with that white paper, and you get a single issue. Oh, this looks beautiful. Like, all of a sudden, I could see this and really feel it. I'm doing the same thing with old Daredevils and like I'm getting the old reprints of X-Men, and I bought a bunch of old reprints of the Fantastic Four, so they're cheaper, but there's it's not as cheap as a trade paperback, but it's way worth it.
yeah.
And it's funny. I think also, I think young kids, I don't know about young kids, but I'm going to assume young kids might see like a trade of like old Jack Kirby or something like that. And the colors, they go, this looks terrible. Why do people love this? And it's like, you got to see it on newsprint. It's built for that. I think that would actually, I think it'll turn some people off when they see this new stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's not how the artists intended.
Yeah.
Biggest thing, and that's like what I don't think a lot of people understand is like, no, they colored it based on the type of paper it was going to be produced on, not based on this bright white fucking glossy paper either, you know? So
yeah, and a great example is Barry Windsor Smith, like Weapon X.
Yep.
I've had the Weapon X trade for years, and I actually, one of my first comics was the last installment in Marvel Comics Presents of Weapon X. I loved it, and I could tell, I was like, oh man, the colors, because he colors it himself, it looks really off on the trade. So finally, this last year, I bought every single issue of the original thing. I was like, thank God, this is great, and I still love this story, I always have, but I was like, this looks like some of the best coloring I've ever seen. Like my mind, there's Lynn Varley is my favorite colorist. I love Dark Knight. I love Elektra. I love all the stuff she's done. Even the Dark Knight Strikes Again, it's not great, but I can see what she's going for. So she's my number one. But Barry Windsor Smith's right around there, especially with Weapon X, the original way he colored it. It just he really knows how to accentuate his own line work and add to it, not detract, and that's tricky.
I gotta pick that up because I was thinking the same thing. I have the trade of Weapon X. I read it not that long ago, and I'm like, dude, the coloring's got to be better on newsprint for sure. So
yeah, and also the covers are great. All those covers are really cool, and it's funny. I used to always hate when I got trades and didn't include the covers. And as I've made trades myself, I kind of see like the bottom line for a lot of these Marvel and DC guys, like that's some extra pages, man. And so if you, especially like a lot of times they'll throw them in the back, and I was like, why do they throw them in the back? And I was like, well, if you do it in between each chapter, then it has a back cover. What are you going to put there? And I was like, okay, it adds up. So like doing Serious Creatures is like, okay, I get it, Marvel, DC. Although you guys are multi-billion-dollar corporation, I figure you guys could, you can
splurge. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did it, for my small, print run or whatever. But okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and I want to ask too. You self-publish most of your stuff.
Yeah.
And then you do the trades, or at least, I mean, I don't know if you,
Yeah.
but I'm assuming you did Lumen also on the Kickstarter.
Yeah, Lumen, I just did the trade, and then Serious Creatures, like I should go back to, I did Kickstarter for my first novel, and I just didn't do it for a couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah, and so Serious Creatures, like, oh, let's see what happens, and it's like, yeah, it was a good idea. I get more press. I was like featured in Kickstarter things for like comic book resource and things like that. Mentioned the Kickstarter, so like I was like, okay, Kickstarter is pretty useful. I should do this more often.
Yeah, I mean, so what is the difference for you in terms of like, well, what's the difference? You self-publishing as a Kickstarter. Do you feel like there's almost more work that goes into the Kickstarter than just promoting yourself without?
So there's definitely some more work, but it's not bad actually. I guess for me, like I with Lumen, I was kind of just, it was like a rocket. I was just printing them and making them, and so when it came to the trade, I was like, oh, let's see what happens if I do the trade. If Serious Creatures, I did the single issues myself, and then I did the trade of Kickstarter, and I realized, yeah, Kickstarter definitely gets the word out. And so it's not much more, there is some more work. The big thing is on social media for years, like 8 years ago on Facebook, I think I had a bigger reach, I had less friends or whatever, because algorithms have changed and it's harder to be an indie creator and kind of get the word out. And so I hated being online and always hawking my wares. And don't worry, I can self-promote. I can Stan Lee it a little bit, but after a while, I don't want to be too annoying. And so Kickstarter was like, well, this for 30 days, I'm gonna be kind of a shitheel and like talk about my stuff a lot. And even to me, like I love talking. I'm doing the show. I love it, But there definitely, I have a ceiling. I'm like, okay, I get it, man. You draw these comics. You got a cool mustache. That's enough. What else you got? And so you had to prepare mentally. So I didn't want to like drain my audience too much, And so, I think it was like, it's been like, I don't know, 6 months since Serious Creatures at a Kickstarter.
Mhm.
So ATTABOY, 6 months I think is a decent amount of time. I guess we'll find out. But for single issues too, I kind of feel like I don't want to be for me personally, when people do like a Kickstarter for each single issue, to me that seems like too much. It seems like you're gonna like eventually wear out your welcome with audiences.
Right.
And so I
Makes
wanted
sense.
to, yeah, I wanted to avoid that. And also with Lumen, I love Copra, and Michelle Fife is one of my favorite creators in every single way. And also I like that he sells on Etsy, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I followed suit, and he didn't do Kickstarters, and I think he said he did Kickstarters a long time ago for something, and he's like, I got no problem with that. I'm doing my thing, it's working, so why bother? And so I tried to do my own thing, and it didn't exactly work as well as him. So I was like, okay, I'll pair that with some Kickstarter action. And again, Kickstarter, it could be fun. It could be really fun and creative. Like doing a video can be kind of cool and fun. And I like rewards angle. I like I was pretty smart the first time I did a Kickstarter. I was like, I'm not going to add a bunch of like stuff that costs money to print or make for extra rewards. I'll draw. I'll do things that don't cost me money per se as extras. And I made money. I didn't lose money, and I know how to factor in shipping. Some people don't get me wrong, I haven't had a Kickstarter made $20,000 yet, but some people go crazy, and then a couple of years later they have like a blog post. Yeah, so I didn't factor in shipping, and now I owed $7,000 and I didn't make any money. And it's like, oh, that sucks, man. I thought you were a runaway success. So I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, speaking of rewards, though, what are you going to do in terms of extra tiers or whatever for people?
Yeah, mine are pretty simple. Like, I like to do I'll do extra ink drawings. I'll do commissions too for like the higher ones, and I'll tell you, I'm considering giving away some of the actual original pages. I don't usually do that, and it's not like I'm like thinking I'm sitting on like a gold mine or anything like that. But I'm kind of like, well, there might foreseeably be in 10 years time, my name might be something more, and maybe these pages will be worth more. And so I'm like, maybe I could get rid of them. I have a friend who's a comic artist, and he's done stuff with Image, and he's like, yeah, I make some money selling my pages, man. He's like, if someone actually wants to buy your pages, you should consider it. Because I've had a few asks, not a lot, but a few people ask me, and I was like, oh, thank you, but no, I don't do that. And he's like, why not? I was like, he's like, what are you doing with them right now? I was like, oh, they're in a pile in the basement on the. And he's like, yeah, that's right. So he's like, the book's done, right? I'm like, huh? He's like, just I was like, okay, I mean, you got a point. So I'm like, yeah, I could. So I'm thinking maybe that would be one of the bigger rewards. But
Uh,
there'll be bundle things. You can buy this in Lumen and this and that. And also digitally, I like to do I've done 3 art books. And the one that was just released recently was actually another oversized book that was really cool. It's called Fairweather Fiends. And I was like, oh, you can get like digital versions of all those, because they're all basically out of print now.
okay.
I do really small runs in those, because there's not a million people want to buy my art books, but there are some people, so they're kind of limited things. So that's a nice little reward. But I don't go too crazy. I'm not going to make like a fake game cartridge or anything like that, because I just don't have the money, man, and it won't look good. Yeah,
That would be kind of cool though. If you had
I would,
dude.
dude. If someone wants to do it for me, like I don't, there's NES makers. You make your own like basically 8-bit game. And I was really tempted to make my own ATTABOY game, but I was like, no, I'll let some awesome person who loves this book make it for me, and as a tribute. And it'll happen someday. Like, just don't worry, someone will make it for you. Because people actually, like, people from our Cartoons Kayfabe and some people online have already made like their own sketches. One guy made a really amazing claymation, like a little clay figure of ATTABOY. So like, it's cool. I mean, I love it. I love like
So
seeing people do their version of it.
yeah, it's dope. Everybody listening, make that game for Tony. It's that shit too.
If you make the game, I'll give you a copy of the book. I mean,
Yeah,
that's basically it. I mean, come on.
yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So we got mid-June for this awesome book that's going to drop. I'm very excited. Can't wait to get a copy of it myself. Is there anything else that you're working on that you want to talk about or maybe tease?
Yeah. Okay, so right now I am doing a podcast called Too Young for This Shit, an
Mhm.
adolescent's addicted to action. It's about action movies that I grew up on. My buddy Pete is a co-host. We've had comic book artists like Josh Bayer and Jesse Lonergan on, and other people from the film industry, yeah, especially indie film, and not like huge people. I mean, it's me. But the podcast is really funny. We talk about Predator and James Cameron, and the action movies of the 80s and 90s, and also the modern ones that we really have shaped us. And so that's been a really fun project. And we're on episode like 8 now. So if you go to iTunes or Spotify, you can find Too Young for This Shit. I think all 12 episodes will be out by whenever you see this. But the next thing I got 2 things. The first thing is I have these 2 novels which have been written for 3 years, which I'm finally going to publish this year. They're called Higher Climbs to Fire and Scratch Witch Scissor City. I've been describing them as like Mark Twain's version of Dune. It's gonna be really weird. It's like a folk rock sci-fi epic. So I'm really excited. I think it's some of the best stuff I've ever done. But after that, I'm gonna start working on Serious Creatures Volume 2, and this will conclude the story. 6 more issues. It's going to be called Serious Creatures Now Leaving the Golden State. And so I'm not going to spoil the first one, but basically, we left Bobby Feckle when he's really starting out in his own in his career. And so this will be Bobby Feckle 1981 on through. So we're going to ride out the special effects of the practical industry, moving to CGI. We're going to see more ups and downs of Bobby. And I'm hoping to have that book, the first issue, maybe by the end of this year, like in people's hands. But I can't wait to do serious doing ATTABOY. I was like, I'm so sick of drawing real world stuff, and I was like, draw some robots, and now I'm like, oh man, it'd be cool to do a bus stop again. I'm going back to the bus stops.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm very excited to hear that there's going to be a volume 2 because, like I said, I really, really dug the book.
Oh, thank you.
Your work. I'm probably gonna hit you up for Lumen after we're done recording it. Shoot you got it. The money. Before we get out of here, throw out some recs of some stuff that you've read recently that you're really digging, and then as we wrap up, just tell everyone where we can find you online and where we can find the Kickstarter.
That sounds great. Okay, so I mentioned earlier in the show, but Dishoom by Sam Royal is an amazing one-man anthology. He works in multi-mediums. He does like painting, ink, color pencils. Dishoom is awesome. It's actually Dishoom, the word actually is the Indian word like for the punch sound effect. I had to ask him, was like, what Dishoom sounds great. What is it? So Dishoom, find that. I would say, Dave Howlett's The Makers. Buy it online. You can get digital copies. You can get physical copies if he hasn't sold out. Issue 1, The Makers, is the Galaxy Quest meets Image Comics thing. Love that. Michelle Fife's Copra is continuing. It's still outstanding. Great work, god tier work, so good. Jesse Lonergan is a personal friend of mine, but he's also one of my favorite cartoonists, which is really weird sometimes. I just want to tell him, oh, you're so fucking good, but usually I'm like, we just talk about bullshit. But Jesse Lonergan's Hedra, which I think blew people away a year ago or so, and his Plant Paradise are great. His new book's called Prime, and it's not out yet, but if you go to his Patreon, you can see the pages. 60 pages of it. I'm like, this is your magnum opus. I think I don't know, unless you really screw this up, dude. Like, this is so, it's a creation myth with superhero iconography in his usual panel layout. Exploration is on fire now. You can't do wrong. Jesse Lonergan Patreon, do that. So Tom Scioli's Patreon is pretty cool too. I love Tom's stuff. He's got a million ideas. So I would definitely look for that. And lastly, the great thing about me is no one has my name. Apparently, my name is spelled very uniquely. So you look up Tony McMillen with the EN. TonyMcMillen.com is my site. You look up Tony McMillen on Etsy. That's where I sell books. You look up Tony McMillen on Instagram. I'm there. On Facebook. I'm a social media darling. I'm nonstop on there. I'm a really lonely guy. I have a baby. I don't go out much. There's a pandemic. And also I'm done with comics for a little bit. So I'm ready to talk to you about dumb stuff. So if you want to argue about Alien and aliens, I'm your guy. Let's do it.
Oh yeah, dude. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for taking time to chat with me, dude. I had a fucking blast.
Me too. Thank you. It was great.
Yeah, dude. So like I said, everybody, before, go back to Kickstarter, make that game for Tony. He'll shoot you a copy of the book when it's printed. And make sure you like and follow his pages on all social media accounts. And I will drop the link to the Kickstarter down below because I will have that by the time this video launches. And dude, I can't wait to talk with you again, dude. Seriously, this is a lot of fun.